Okay, we are back. Building Think Loud, episode 2. Our 12-month plan. Personally, my vision, and I think this kind of speaks to the relationship in the business, is like I have the ideas and I understand the vision of the business, and I've obviously been in it for just under 12 months now, having built it to this point. So I've got like a clear idea in my head. I struggle with the implementation part, and so I think that's where you're coming in to really integrate that.
Yes.
Integrate all of those ideas into not only the services but then the marketing and all of the bits and pieces of the business.
Getting you from the 95% to the 100%.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You are the very crucial 1% or 5%. So in saying all of that, we've spoken at length on where the business is heading, what we want to do, what we want to offer, who we want to help, all that kind of stuff. And that's what this is ultimately about. One, I guess, to talk to anyone who maybe is looking to start a podcast, has thought about it, who's really interested in this world, who may want to work with us or become part of the community or whatever. But two, just to document the business side of things and the journey for anyone who just loves to hear about business and who is on their own journey, who just wants to hear it.
Yeah.
As well. So it's a little bit twofold.
And like a time capsule, because in 12 months' time we can listen back.
100%.
And see if what we envisioned came to fruition.
Yeah, which I think is a really important point, because although I've got a bit of a North Star and I've got the ideas and I've got the visions and I've got the whatever, I'm at a place now, which is something I've really had to work a lot on, in becoming okay with it not going that way.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important thing in business, is things do change and adaptation is really important, and molding and being flexible, because a lot of the times you kind of face things that you don't know, and then it's like, oh crap, well, that no longer works for my plan anymore. Now I need to pivot in order to get to where I want to go. But initially my vision, that was never kind of going to work anyway, because you have an idea in your head and then you go, oh crap, I didn't see this coming. Now I have to shift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. So, look, we're going to speak about where we're at now, where the business is at now. So that's a bit of like a time capture of where we're at right now. What makes us different? Who our services are for, who Think Loud is for, and there's more than just services to this, which we'll get to. How can podcasting be used? So giving a little bit of insight into what we believe podcasting can be used for, because there's more to podcasting than I think people realize. How does it all work? What's our approach with who we work with? And then just looking at the different things that we offer. So again, this all plays back into how can you use podcast style content, which I'll break down soon, to grow your business, grow your brand, grow what it is that you do, if you're looking to develop this style of content.
Great.
And that's it.
That's great.
Where we're at now, where would you say we are right now?
We are in the planning phase with having me come into the business.
Yeah.
I think it's then, you've had complete control and you've sort of been the driver of your own ship. So now you've got another person that is not only, there's an element of accountability that's come with that as well. What I do want to say is I did not realize how much you had planned and how in depth you had planned things. Like, you have thought of literally everything, which I think speaks to your passion, but also the fact that like you've just gotten to this bit of a roadblock where you needed someone to help you implement those things because you're only one person. The business has been around for nearly 12 months, but I'm just sort of stepping in now. We've had a great we've had many conversations, but we have had like a whole day of planning ideas, where you see me in the business, where I see me in the business, what you want to focus on. And then now we are in the marketing phase. So that's a big one. Building the website, getting really clear on what services are being offered, what pillars of the business we're each going to focus on.
Yeah.
And just having a lot of organic conversations around, like, I think when you step into business with someone, I don't see the fact that we're siblings being an issue. Like, I don't think you and I butt heads in any way, but I think communication is going to be key in anything. And so it's just making sure that we're on the same page.
The branding side of things, I think, was a bit of a catalyst of building a legitimate business. For me, that's what it felt like, because you're right. It's up until this point, it's kind of been my ship. I've used everything that I've learned up until this point to create this business and what it offers. I think over the last 8 months, I've spent testing and building a model that I know can work. And that still is being refined. But I think really being in working with clients to go, this works, this doesn't, this is how long it realistically takes to do this, this is who it's for, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, these are the holes I need to fill in the business, you being one of them. And just really getting everything together to the point now where I see what it can be, but it really just needs time. It needs time and it needs resources to now get it to where I know it can go. I think that I think we're up to about 7 shows now that we've produced, like actual podcasts, and probably worked with another 6 or 7 businesses just to produce podcast style content, which is something that I said I would speak about a little bit down the track. To just produce that content for them. And so I've had the runs on the board. I've produced 6 shows prior to that as well. There's your show that we're going to be bringing under Think Loud. There's this show as well. And so I've been able to really do a lot of the track work, the beginning stages, to now where it's like, okay, I understand it. Now I know that I need someone to help me, i.e. you. To really implement a lot of these ideas, to really get this out to people, across to people, get it articulated well. The website's just about to be redesigned, recreated, and everything's kind of falling into place, like I said, to create that legitimate business.
Yeah, 100%. And you also engaged someone to help with your branding.
Yeah.
So you invested money into getting a legitimate professional brand, and that, I think that's what helped push you to take this to the next level, to then look at website design. It really made it feel like you were really clear.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think at the stage that it's at the moment, like when we talk to, say, our family about this and me coming into the business, it's not 100% clear right now to people.
Yeah.
And I think once we have marketing, because there's so much you can do, right? Podcasting, as we said in the previous episode, can mean so many different things to people.
Yeah.
I think traditionally it means, going onto Spotify and choosing a category and then starting to listen to a podcast. But there is so many other things that you can do in podcasting or podcast style content. So yeah, I think we're at a stage that once the website is built out, that's super clear. We'll get into a flow. Our roles will become a lot more clear. And yeah, we'll just go from there.
Yeah. And I also think there's a lot to be said to going through that branding exercise, investing the money, investing the time, making that a priority, because one of the things, G'day Frank, who's the branding person I worked with, he said to me, I respect you for doing this, but make sure it's the right decision, because the investment that you're putting into this, we're going through that and putting making that a priority for myself to go, okay, I'm feeling all of the fear that this won't work. I'm feeling all the uncertainty. I'm unsure if this is the right move to make in business. Is this the right way to allocate money? Because with that money, I can put into new equipment. I can put into advertising. I can put into subcontracting, getting editors. Like there's so much that you can do with the funds in the business. But why did I decide to do that? And I think when I look back at it, I think that was one, for the look and the feel and the direction of the business, to get the messaging and the colors and the logo and all of that, the whole branding process done, which I'm going to get him in to do a full episode on this because it's so fascinating. I think that was such a great move for that. But I think I come back to the legitimacy, taking that step to go, I'm actually going to really give this a crack, was like the thing that I didn't know would happen, but that had the most impact.
Yeah.
And so I think by going through this, and again, why we're documenting this process is like to show what works and what doesn't, so that we can then provide that. Because podcasting requires branding. It requires a plan similar to a business plan. It requires all of the elements that a business would need, not at the scale a lot of the times, but it requires a lot of these elements. And so by going through this process of building the business, I can then make my services even better. Okay, what makes us different?
I think the fact that we are related.
Yeah.
I think that does make us a little bit, I don't know if it's different in this from a business perspective, but certainly there's personality traits that are similar with us. I think we both have the same values and have grown up with the same values. When I think of you in your space and me in my experience career-wise and personality-wise, I would say like that passion to help people is definitely, you can't teach someone how to be that. And I think we're just naturally that. We genuinely want to help people succeed.
Yeah.
We want to deliver high quality work.
Yeah.
I think I really pride myself on having really good communication skills as well. I think I'm really good at communicating, creating, making people feel really comfortable. I really love, being efficient, reliable, and that's a quality that has served me in every role that I've ever had. And I think people who have worked with me as colleagues or as clients would agree. So I think, that's important. I don't know if that's what makes us different. What would you say?
I would say definitely a big differentiator is the fact that this is what we do, and it is very specific in the style of content that we create. And I've worked across, I don't think there is an industry that you can name that I haven't worked in as a content creator, a photographer, or a videographer. And when I say like this is where I want to spend all of my time, that comes from knowing what every other space looks like and feeling really passionate about being in this. And so I think there's a level of like, this is what we do. And so for people who want to dive into this, like 100% this is the place for them. And then I probably just come back to the passion around it. Like I think, which we'll dive into next around who this is all for. It's like who we do decide to work with. Like we do really think hard about that. And I know for me, with all the past clients that I've worked with, if I see it in them, like I will push down and I will say, you need to do this. And I will also tell people if it's not for them. And so I think it's this mix of being really passionate about it and also being able to read people really well and push them in the direction that I think they need to go.
I think podcasting brings out passion in people.
100%.
Like, and I think that is also, you flip it on its head, and that's actually a really exciting part of podcasting is it just brings out, like, people's passion for what they do comes out when they start speaking about it. It's why they're in the space that they're in.
One thing that I think people probably don't know, and it's just because you don't really know this until you step into it, is like when it comes to being on the mic, stepping up to that mic, like knowing what to say and knowing, again, how to be, it sounds weird, but it's like how to be authentic takes time to get to that place. And so I think there's a level of expectation management. And I think what I've seen, like I spoke before about, you know, up until this point, I've worked with a lot of people to help them produce their podcast, is probably one of the strengths that I'll selfishly admit that I have when I'm working with clients on the day of recording, is being able to coach them on how to be more confident on camera and how to just be okay with stuffing up as well. Like even I mean, you wouldn't see this because it's a final edited podcast, but I've got to start and stop this camera next to me. There's parts where we're, you know, having to take a breather. There's parts where we stuff up, we lose our train of thought. Like, you're 32 weeks pregnant, like the baby brain's real. Like,
the organs are sitting up high at the moment.
The organs are, it's that whole process of, like, as someone who's recording, it's this constant question of, am I doing the right thing? Is this going to work? Am I doing the right thing? Is this going to sound great? And I think for me, I'm really good at being able to read people on how to help them improve 1% every time, but then also just give them the space to learn on their own. Because when we talk podcasting, it's a long-term investment. It's also a massive growth journey, like a personal development journey 100%. Of learning who you are and how you are in this style of setting. And I think that's probably something that I've never really thought about before, is that part of it, of like, it's uncomfortable when you first start, but isn't that exciting? Because when you're uncomfortable, you grow.
Agreed. The fact that we have both worked in podcasting, and like, I think back to when I first started, I've always had the ability to facilitate good conversations, but over time I have learned how to like refine that, get better at my conversations. My podcast is an interview style. I've always got someone sitting in there and I'm interviewing them. So learning from experience, having started my own podcast, that has then enabled us to be in the positions to really help people in when they first sit in front of a mic.
Who are our services for? So this kind of ties into a little bit of stuff that we've kind of led to is who is podcasting for? Who do you think it's for?
Like, a part of me wants to say it's for anybody, but that's not true. I think it's for people that are clear on who they are, what they want the podcast to be, like why they're doing it, that they're passionate, they have something that is worth sharing. But I feel like you're going to disagree with that.
I think you're spot on. I think probably the difference, I think where I would probably argue is the emphasis on the clear, because bringing it back to, it doesn't have to be perfect when you start. And so I think people can associate being really clear and having everything planned out with it being perfect and ready to go, which I think is probably the biggest thing that hinders people in starting one. But I do think you are spot on in there needs to be a reason for it. And I think, look, the only exception would be you've got mates in a room who want to talk shit. And that's great. Like, there are podcasts out there that are highly successful built off that model, 100%. But I think when we bring it down to probably the ideal person who we want to speak to and who we want to work with, you're probably on the money of like, you really need to want to provide people as much value. And I think where that comes into play, and this is something that I have battled with in the past with wanting to start a podcast with other people but misaligning on visions is, for me, I'm like, give away your secrets. And I think if people want to hold their cards close to their chest, but they want to kind of, go, we can help you do this, but you've got to go over here to see it. We're not going to reveal it in the podcast. Or like, we know this and we know this and we know this, but you're not willing to dive into that. I think that's a red flag as a listener. And so I think going into a podcast, an important ingredient is being willing to give away the secrets.
Yes.
Because that's what I think creates a podcast that stands out, because a lot of people who do start podcasts don't have that mindset and they wonder why it's not doing well.
Yeah, because you've got to give people a reason to listen. And you put yourself in your potential listeners' shoes. Why do you choose the podcasts that you do?
Correct.
What drives you to search for a specific one? I listen to so many different categories of podcasts, love them, I think, and also depending on where I'm at. So sometimes if, when I was looking to start a bit of a side hustle while I was on maternity leave, I was listening to CEOs, startup business podcasts. I was listening to people that, I felt that I could connect with, that were, had been on that journey. How did they go about it? So that educational side. I've listened to a lot of motherhood, when I was a new mum and feeling like I had no idea what I was doing. You leverage into those podcasts. I agree with what you said when you said people that just want to sit down and have banter, have chats with their friends. I think you can do that. But if you don't know why you're doing it, and there's not a reason behind it, I think you're going to lose momentum and you're going to lose motivation to do it, because it's we're just here to talk shit and see what happens. I think that fizzles out if there's no true intent behind it. One thing that I have learned, through just my own exploration, but obviously working within this business, is there's so many different kinds of podcasts out there. Mini-series, there are seasons, there are ongoing podcasts, there are educational platforms, there are one-offs. Some people just want to do 1 or 2 episodes for their website and branding. You can absolutely do that. But commit to what you decide to do.
Yeah.
Is probably what I would say.
Yeah. Awesome.
How does what we do work?
If someone was to come into our world, they were like, hey, I want to do a podcast. I think the way that we work is something that we've probably harped on, is understanding if this is right for you. Now, it's also not to say that, is it a question of, is podcasting right for you? It comes down to, do we believe we can help you? I.e., do we believe in what you're doing? But before that, do we believe that you believe in it? And I think that's really, really important, because another thing we've consistently spoken about is the commitment. Is the commitment to something like this, getting clear on what it is that you want to do. There are lots of different options on how we work together, like doing one-off sessions, like just focusing on short-form content, like creating a full podcast, creating seasons, creating website-specific content, advertising. There's so much that we can do within this realm, but we need to believe in what you're doing, and we need to believe that you believe in what you're doing. And so that's kind of where it starts. The next is to understand what we want to create. What is it that we want to get out of this? What is the intention and what is the goal? Now, the goal could be to build a brand, to build a podcast, to get tons of subscribers and listeners or whatever. Or it could just be to keep it small and have a small niche show that just complements an existing business. We just need to understand what that looks like. Now, a huge opportunity I see for most businesses, not every business, but most businesses, even some who think this isn't for them, is to use a podcast to leverage an offer that is scalable. Now, how that might look, I'll use Think Loud as an example. We're just about to release digital products. So one is an entire podcast planner that helps you name your podcasts. It helps you create ideas. It helps you structure your podcast. It's got tons of AI prompts to help with the process. It's a storehouse for all the information. It's got how to produce a media kit. It's got everything you need to create a podcast. That is something that I've spent the last 12 months building out. And that's something that I want to offer for people at a price to get access to fast track their podcast success. Now, even if you're just a local business, if you're in a field that can provide an online service or an online product that you can use a podcast to leverage that, then podcasting is a great way to market that tool. Market it authentically, like we focused none of the call to actions, none of the content that we've done to date promotes any kind of product or service. We're just kind of speaking. Build an authentic show to build that trust to then be able to sell that product. And I think that's definitely a space when we talk about our 12-month plan, that's definitely a space that I want to lean into with the people that we help, is people who can do that. And so that's where I see such a great opportunity, is like when you think a little bit outside the box of how for a podcast, I've got to get a sponsor and I have to do brand deals to partner with people. Although I definitely believe in that, I think why not give yourself all of the power to control the entire show and the potential money that can be made in it.
Yes.
So one thing that has come up multiple times throughout this episode is speaking about podcasting and podcast style content. And this is really important because it's actually something that I've seen that you didn't quite understand. And so it kind of pricked my ears to go, okay, if you're not understanding it, I need to work on making that clearer, which is all part of the game of business, is especially when working in a field that isn't really, there's not a lot of it out there. Like there's not a lot of podcasting based, service-based businesses or agencies out there. And so with that comes a lot of, well, what's it all about and what does it offer and what can I do and what can't I do? And so I'm going to break down what's the different types of services and offers that we provide that we can touch on. So the first one, obviously podcasting. Now, even within this could be a podcast that is released weekly, fortnightly, monthly, consistently for as little or as long as you like. That is all up to you. The thing that is the most important is to set the expectation from the beginning. And it comes back down to that commitment piece that you were speaking about. So even if that is, I'm going to do a monthly episode, meaning I'm going to do 12 episodes a year, it's making the commitment to do that. The podcasting service that we provide, like I said, is customizable in that way. And this can look in many different ways. You can have guests on, you can do a solo episode, you can leverage your team if you've got a team in your business, if you're a solopreneur or an online coach or whatever it is, you can roll these off by yourself. We can help you with virtual episodes if your guests are international or interstate, or you just want to operate remotely.
You think of a business like a lawyer, and that, to someone who's never had to engage in services with a lawyer, you immediately think black tie, suitcase, intimidating, knows how to have an argument, and a massive price tag if you ever need them, right?
Yeah.
But there are so many different personalities out there and different styles and businesses, and someone that I know who you would not even think that they were a lawyer because they are just a total, like they don't fit the bill.
Yeah.
But that's actually their best quality about them. So to have someone like that do a podcast series on debunking maybe even stigmas around, engaging in lawyer services, what that means, what that process looks like, and talking someone through from start to finish, that then not only makes them really seem really approachable, it helps with their branding, their marketing, and that's going to naturally bring business through the door. But it's also really educational. And so that's an example of where I go podcasting would be epic. A mini educational series.
Yeah.
Like that's just one example of so many others. And I will say too, I have come from working in the aesthetic space, and I've worked with so many clients who, you can go anywhere for an aesthetic treatment. The industry has evolved and so much over the years as well. There's a lot of restrictions within the industry that you can't talk about publicly. So a lot of it is reliant on word of mouth. That is another great example of where you could engage in podcasting or podcast style content to educate your audience. It credentials you, it shows you, gives a bit more of a deep dive into who you are as a person, why people should trust you. And that's just another example.
Yeah.
And I've got a million of those. Just to
100%.
Yeah.
Look, that gives me a great idea for an episode of looking at, different industries and how they could leverage content, because I'm holding back in giving my 2 cents on that because there's so much to dive into, but we shall keep going.
Yes.
Website content. Now, this is where the podcast style content comes into it. What I mean by podcast style content is exactly like you and I are doing right now. We're sitting across from each other. We've got the mic set up. We've got the cameras rolling. It's set up like a podcast. But when people think podcast, they think someone's going to drop an episode weekly, fortnightly, however consistently. But if we're looking at podcast style content, this can be a one-off session. So this can be one session with one core intention, with a series of touch points, with the intention of producing content for a specific platform or for a series of platforms. Doesn't have to be Spotify and Apple, doesn't have to be a podcasting platform. It can be website, it can be socials, it can be advertising, whatever it is. When we think about website content, we look at, okay, people build their websites differently, and that's cool. But if we look at, you've got a homepage where people want to get a good glimpse at what your business is all about or what you offer is all about. You've got a page that's dedicated to the team or learn more about me or us. You've got what we offer or services. You've got case studies or client testimonials. All of those pages plus some are an opportunity to create a piece of content in the form of video to help people understand what you're all about, what you do, your services, and what people say about you. The reason why this podcast style content works so well is that you can take a 60-minute conversation and have every single piece of content that you need for your website ready to go after 60 minutes. And rather than talking directly to a camera, setting up a teleprompter, having to memorize words, having to memorize things specifically, you can have someone across from you prompting you and asking you questions. You can go back and forth. You can have a natural, candid conversation. All of that information will come out. And all you would really need to do to prepare is have a list of key points that you want to touch on, someone there to bounce back and forth with who can dive a little bit deeper and dig and maybe look at things a little bit differently and help get that information out of you. That is going to lead to the most authentic and best content that I think you could get.
Could not agree more.
For most people.
Yeah, I could not agree more. This was a passion of mine. This is actually how I initially started thinking I could work with you, because I interview people all the time. And I see such value in when I have interviewed them, seeing them come out of their shell, and have also seen the success of those interviews then play into their overall brand within their business, like if they own their own business. So this for me is something I'm really passionate about, because I also, you know, I am someone that can facilitate that with a business. I do believe I've got the skills to ask the right questions and delve a little bit deeper, because again, back to our point of difference, that real care factor, like we want this to be super successful. And I agree with what you said about it's a lot more intimidating. Don't get me wrong, it's like intimidating when you first sit behind a mic, but it is more intimidating to be mic'd up, staring into a camera, having to say, you know, this is who I am. My name's Lauren Cooney. I'm 30 years old. You get really like, you can get quite jittery.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's conversational, it's authentic. And a lot of marketing podcasts that I've been listening to around like, you know, 20 in this era that we're in, people want authenticity. They want the bloopers. They want the stuff ups. They want to feel like you're human.
Yeah.
And that also then comes back to that connection piece. That's how people connect with you.
Yeah.
But also it's not just for your website. You can make TikToks, you can do socials, you can do Instagram reels, you can regenerate this as well. Any key things that you say, short form content, there's a few ways that we can deliver this. It's having a series of 10 points, 10 questions, 10 topics, whatever it is, and rapid firing, purely with the intention of creating short form content for socials, for ads, for basically any platform that you want, that doesn't have to be a long form episode. Again, the most fluent and authentic and easy way to do that is to sit down for 60 minutes, run through those points, rapid fire, and pump that content out. In 60 minutes, you're going to have probably 8 to 15 pieces of solid short form content that, I mean, if you space that out, that's a good month, 2 months worth of content. So again, massive value, but also an opportunity to explore what podcasting is all about without committing to podcasting, but for a different outcome. Okay, to finish this up, 3 big goals. Next 12 months, we said this episode is our 12-month plan. 3 big goals for Think Loud. First goal is to build this show, this one right here, as the ultimate case study for our services. I think this goal comes down to practicing what you preach. I think it makes perfect sense to have a podcast. It's something I'm super passionate about. I've had multiple podcasts and always wanted to be a podcaster and a host, and I love to conduct interviews. And so it just makes total sense, but it's also just the ultimate embodiment of everything that we do with our clients is what we're trying and testing through this show, whether it be putting this style of content on the website to show that podcast style content to produce website content is a great way to do marketing and a great way to get content onto your website. It's the short form content that we're generating from this podcast to show how short form content can be repurposed and redistributed throughout socials and into paid advertising. That's something that we plan on doing. And it's to build a podcast that we want to build so that we can show people how that can look. And I just think that is such a priority for me because, one, the best way to learn is just to do it, is through action. And so if I can be at the forefront conducting and building this podcast, I can see what works and what doesn't, and in turn create a much better service for Think Loud. Goal number 2, online community. The online community is a place for people who want to start a podcast on their own, or if you're international, if you're outside. I mean, obviously, we're a service-based business that only services certain areas, anywhere from Sydney up to Newcastle.
if you're out of that area and you really want to work with us, 100% reach out because I love to travel. But ultimately, if you're sitting there and you're someone who wants to start a podcast, but you want to do it on your own, or you really just want to kind of give it a try and you want to see if this is right for you on your own accord, this community is going to be a place where you can access even more education, even more value. Obviously, it's going to be a community for people just like you and us to come together and talk ideas. And I'm going to be giving away tools and guides and a whole ton of stuff. So that's something that I'm really keen on building, is the online community. And the third thing is to create a full service offering. Now, I've spoken a little bit about this, about creating the content funnels and being able to help people from start to finish. Right now, where ThinkLoud sits is really great at helping people plan, and it's really great at offering a production service, something that I've been doing for over a decade. And I love that we get to produce really premium style content. The part that has been lacking is the third and arguably one of the most important parts, which is the promotional phase. So there's plan, produce, and promote is what we do. And the promotion is all about how do we distribute? How do we get the content out there? How do we get it in front of the people who really need to hear what you have to say? How do we get eyes on your content to build your audience to then come into your world, to join your community, to buy your products and services, whatever it might look like? That's the third part that we're working on. I think that part is where we're going to need to really bring in the right people for. So I think there's been probably the most resistance in that, in just where we're at right now, in the stage of the business that we're in. It's definitely something that we can help with theoretically, but we're yet to have those implementers. That's it. That's the 12-month plan.
Will it change? Will it evolve? Yes.
Will it change? Will it evolve? I think it's probably inevitable. It's probably inevitable. I don't see why we can't actually get there sooner and set some new goals sooner than that 12-month mark. But we'll see what time brings, and we'll see you in the next one.